So this is part A of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel being broadcast only on the internet at 09:20 hours GMT on Wednesday, the 16th of June 2021. So what we have got is the financial crimes is continuing to cover up for the financial criminals. And the Daily Mirror, which is pretentiously not a conservative propaganda organ, is in denial of, probably in terms of the mainstream Fleet Street, the biggest story concerning the London Metropolitan Police being branded as institutionally corrupt in a report published yesterday after a lot of corrupt maneuvers to suppress it, maneuvers by the daughter of two asylum seekers who is now at work to deny, defeat, delay, distort all known universal values of due process, accountability, etc. And the spelling is misleading. The pronunciation is confusing. And the association with that name being referred to or having to be referred to is always the opposite of what the sound of the first name comes across as. In the English language, the pronunciation pretty is obviously pretty, aesthetically beautiful. And in the Sanskrit origin word pretty, which is the first name of Priti Patel, the word pretty is not beautiful, but it is a form of romance, love. But it is a very positive word, and it denotes love. I mean, that is the name. But since she became the publicly identified stooge for the Conservative Party's leadership in this country, and she became promoted far more fiercely and far more as a fascist than any of the other ethnicity-linked recruits so far. And Priti Patel is somebody who is demonstrably callous and intellectually very challenging or very challenged, and is prone to confuse content and substance and slogans. And she is, in terms of her record so far, over the last, let's say, 15 years in frontline kind of conservative politics, she's absolutely fit for the unfits if you like, fit for the unfit for purpose. So, in the report that has come out yesterday and published about the murder of the private investigator Daniel Morgan, the only paper, Fleet Street paper, that has any recognition about the allegations against the Metropolitan Police. That picture is of the first woman commissioner of the London Metropolitan Police, which has got a very remarkable name. Her surname is Dick, rotten to the core, and her name is Cressida Dick. Now, many people who are experts in the English colloquial often make fun of her name, Cressida Dick. But this is not a funny situation. This is not an item to make fun about at any level. The admission by the Daily Mail that the Metropolitan Police is rotten to the core has been long overdue. Now, this is the program. This is the Khoodeelaar television channel, and we specialize exclusively in diagnosing the corruption of Fleet Street, the racism of Fleet Street, that is, these newspapers. This is the Daily Mail, and this is the Financial Crimes, and this one is the I newspaper, which has become, in the last few years, a version of the Daily Mail's agenda. And the Daily Mail's agenda remains, despite the headline that we shall go into again, very much dedicated to the agenda of denial, narrative of denial. Now, we don't buy the Irish Post every day, but today we made an exception. And this is because of the main piece on the front page of the Irish Post, which costs £1.50 cash in the UK and £2 in the EU or euro, or €2, let's say. And this is the reason, because the heading is concerns increase over Delta variant, and the subheading is calls for mandatory quarantine for passengers to Ireland from Britain. It's a piece by Rachel O'Connor, whatever the pronunciation in the original Irish. The Irish government is to discuss harsher restrictions on travellers arriving into Ireland from Britain as the Delta variant of COVID-19 continues to spread in the UK. Now, remember when a few weeks ago, the Boris Johnson peddling lying Fleet Street papers overplayed and overhyped the alleged 0 death on one day. And they immediately, stupidly, logically promoted the correlation based on that completely false data that restrictions and lockdown should be removed. Now, that we said was completely irresponsible and corrupt, and it has turned out to be so. Now, this is the version of the Irish Post, continuing rise. And the Daily Mirror is typically conceited. The Daily Mirror of Fleet Street is absolutely conceited. the conceited part of Fleet Street. It always conceited and distorted and completely embarrassingly stupid, unimaginative, and very ethically and morally and aesthetically challenged. We are not even reading the Uri Geller brother promotion on the Daily Star London, which is published from the same kind of collection as the Daily Mirror Group, but it is following the same ideology and narrative of idiocy that it had been doing since it was founded in the probably 1970s. I mean, instead of doing the headline about the police, it is doing the stupidest possible item about the brother of Uri Geller spinning for himself. And the Murdoch's scum is the same as we have tweeted already. It is doing a promotion for the idiotic promotion for Joanna Lumley and her co-host actress Jennifer Saunders, who is said she would not get away with making her sitcom absolutely fabulous in today's woke era. Now, what they are saying is woke. Woke is an expression by racists and deniers and imperialists and assorted crooks in various positions of making decisions. So that is the corrupt perpetration of racism and sexism and imperialism and denial of the truth. There is no reference to the report about Daniel Morgan's murder in 1987. And the idiocy of the politically dead Keir Starmer is given a kind of token reference in the scum on page 2. Now, the idiotic Keir Starmer is given this heading: Keir, child killer, has to be released. Can you believe it? This idiot, Keir Starmer, was in post as the Director of Public Prosecutions for Little England for 5 years. 5 years during the 34 years since the murder of Daniel Morgan. And Starmer didn't do anything. For 5 years, he didn't ask any questions and he didn't appoint any specific investigation into the police role in suppressing and hiding and denying the murder of Daniel Morgan in 1987. And the scum is full of garbage news, suitable, absolutely suitable for the gullibles. And the idiotic trade deal with Australia, which is absolutely typical corrupt stupidity on the part of Boris Johnson. And they've got a 2-page spread about the campaign by the reckless to show no regard for the safety of the people over the lockdown. And there is a piece about the BBC's Martin Bashir. And the heading is Bashir's crime, one of worst. And BBC bosses wrapped, and there are 3 BBC Director Generals, including one who is currently in place, and the other 2, one is Tony Hall and the other one is Bart. And this pretentious woman, Jane Moore, completely corrupt, has nothing to say about the police corruption. And it's only on page 20 of today's Scum, which underplays in the headline. Instead of what the Mail has admitted, rotten to the core, the Scum says Matt corruption over X murder. It's like it's nothing. It's really nothing. It doesn't say Matt police. So the Scum has colluded over 34 years with the crooks and liars and murderers and criminals in hiding and denying the facts and the evidence of the murder of the investigator who was in his 30s when he was murdered. And what they say about rebellion, as we have said, it's not possible to substantiate the concept of rebellion when it comes to any number of Conservative MPs, number under 50. Because the Conservatives have been given the majority, the landslide majority, by a stupid, intellectually challenged leadership of the Labour Party before it was murdered politically by the current, quote, leader. Corbyn handed Boris Johnson the landslide victory in December 2019. And that is a majority of 80 members of parliament. And it is very difficult to see, strictly mathematically, how 81 Conservative MPs would unite to stage a parliamentary vote against Boris Johnson. So that is the problem. Opposing Boris Johnson-fronted cabal in the House of Commons, the current numbers of votes is nearly impossible because of the numbers, not because of the morality or the ethics or the desirability. The numbers cannot be imagined to exceed 80. Numbers voting against Boris Johnson or not voting for his move, that is impossible to imagine at this present current numerical stage. Now, the only paper we are looking at, the Times, has got the front page second item of the two, headed Met accused of corruption over murder investigation. Now, historically, the Times is the newspaper, not when it was, it was the Times when it wasn't owned by Rupert Murdoch, and it published the first time any Fleet Street paper really published any statement saying that the Metropolitan Police was corrupt. And the Times didn't call it the Metropolitan Police. The Times published in the 1960s a report about the police, and it called the Metropolitan Police Scotland Yard. Scotland Yard is always misleading. And as I said, the financial crimes hasn't got any there is no mention either on the 3-item banner nor on the briefing, and most certainly not in the news prominent main leading items. There are 2 leading items on the front page of the financial crimes, and there is no item about the report that the Metropolitan Police has been and is institutionally corrupt. And we're looking at the inside up to page 5. There is nothing. Six, nothing. Page 7, nothing. Page 8, page 9, nothing. Pages 10, 11, nothing. So why is the financial crimes doing this? And the financial crimes has got a stupid, absolutely untruthful heading to a letter, top letter today, which says the judicial system is a ideal model for auditing. Well, as anyone viewing this program knows, we describe the English, because it is England-centered, judicial corruption bureaucracy. There is no justice in England. to the corrupt, criminal, racist, legal bureaucracy. Now, we shall check online for the financial crimes over the police corruption that the Times has got. The Times is the only one. We are not looking at the Guardian yet. We should look at the Guardian, which has got a piece on the front page today, because the shop where we bought the newspapers didn't have the Guardian, which is not the first time we are reporting this. The Guardian circulation somehow is suffering from this, strictly in terms of circulation, not in terms of the value or the quality. So it seems online there are at least two pieces that we have spotted on the Financial Times online, which is that is Metropolitan Police in London, accused of institutional corruption by inquiry into unsolved murder. Now that is a completely false end to the headline. And it's a contradictory subheading. Report finds Force's priority had been to safeguard its reputation rather than to reveal how Daniel Morgan came to be killed. So the Financial Crimes has got a piece. We shall look again how small that one is in the print, if that is in the print. Because the online result shows that this item was posted 16 hours ago. By that calculation, it should be in the print version of the Financial Crimes. Well, after checking this, we can't find the Financial Times print edition recognizing that report that it has posted two items on. One says 16 hours ago and one 5 hours ago. The 5 hours ago one is obviously not expected to be in the paper. So why is the Financial Crimes not covering the report about Daniel Morgan? And the Financial Crimes is doing the peddling for the UK Finance Minister, Rishi Sunak. And the running theme, the running agenda of the Financial Crimes is one of denial. Denial of the truth about the corrupt operation of markets, capitalism, and so on. And of course, the military-industrial complex. Now, the Times is the one, as I said, we haven't got the copy of the Guardian, which we shall look at online to see the actual stance they're making about the report. So the Times has got the front page, Matt accused of corruption over murder investigation. And then 2 pages spread, 10 and 11, Daniel Morgan inquiry. And the leading article, Matt's culture of self-protection has been exposed, on page 27. So let's look at the page 27 one. Let's see if the Times actually acknowledges its own report in the 1960s. It says institutional corruption. The Daniel Morgan inquiry has exposed the Metropolitan Police's culture of self-protection. Let's see what it actually says. No, it hasn't got any reference to the report published by the Times itself in the 1960s. So that is symbolic, representative of the stupidity and ignorance on the part of the people who are making the decisions at editorial policy level at the Times now. And according to the Week, the newspaper, the Week, the magazine, dated the 22nd of July 2018, that is 3 years ago, the Metropolitan Police was facing its biggest police corruption inquiry after it was revealed 14 officers working in the Met's elite anti-corruption biggest elite anti-corruption unit under investigation for serious corruption and malpractice. Now that was to do with the investigation by the Metropolitan Police into allegations about pedophile crimes committed by Edward Heath, Leon Britton, and others, ex-members of parliament or ex-politicians. So what we are looking for, remember, this is the world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street. We have checked the Financial Times, which has no story about the report by this independent panel, so-called yesterday. And the only tabular-sized one with anything is the Daily Mail, rotten to the core. And the Times has got 3 items. One, the editorial, that is the leader comment, which is completely stupid. It doesn't read like a leader column. The Times editorial, institutional corruption. It reads like another summary of a news report about the item. But it has got the news report on the front page, as well as the extended contents on pages 10 and 11. So the editorial should have a policy approach to the corruption of the Metropolitan Police and in the Metropolitan Police. And amazingly, there is a piece in the Times on page 13. It's a small piece. The bigger piece is about China enlisting UK student influencers, but the smallest one is thousands of soldiers are not fit enough for combat. It's a piece by Larissa Brown, and the first paragraph reads, thousands of soldiers have been forced to undergo more training after being deemed too unfit to fight. Almost 6,000 troops were considered unconditional. Sorry, reading that again. Almost 6,000 troops were considered unconditioned after receiving low scores in the British Army's new fitness tests. These include sprints, jumps, pull-ups, and throwing a 4 kg medicine ball. And on page 12, the main piece is about the members of parliament quizzing two former BBC Director General. The Lord Hall, that is Tony Hall, and the other is Bart. And there is a piece about the appearance, bylined by the Times sketchwriter, political sketchwriter, Quentin Letts. We shall avoid the Letts offering. The main paragraph by David Brown in the Bashir deeply wicked, says ex-BBC boss. A former head of the BBC has condemned Martin Bashir as deeply wicked and a serial liar on an industrial scale for his deceit in securing an interview with Princess Diana. The problem with this focus on the alleged deception at the center of Martin Bashir being given the interview by Diana is that Diana is not around, and she cannot be consulted about what actually happened, what actually made her agree to the interview. Regardless of what Bashir's immorality and deception and dishonesty on whatever scale, it was absolutely a matter of time after Brian, that is Brenda's elder son, Charlie, gave the interview that was broadcast already. And after that interview that Charlie gave, that is Brian gave to the media, it was only a matter of time that Diana would want to give her views about this overcrowded marriage. I mean, one of the most important phrases, if not the important phrases, was Diana's statement as broadcast in the 1995 Panorama interview fronted by Martin Bashir, was that the marriage was overcrowded. It was a crowded marriage, and the fact that Brenda didn't do anything to end her son's stupidity in having the affair with Camilla Parker Bowles shows that she has not helped the monarchy, the reputation, if you like. And she had to be dragged. Brenda had to be dragged in 1997 to come out and face the impact of the murder of Diana. We call it murder because it is still not clear as to how that accident came to happen the way it did. And they're saying in this one that Diana's brother, Charles, who is described as Earl Spencer, so the various kind of versions of the events that are being repeated and repeatedly referred to keep suggesting that Diana was paranoid, that she was not able to think for herself. Now that is based on all the evidence that were available at the time, long before she gave that interview, long before she died or was murdered. Add up to a situation where it wasn't Bashir who fed her anything about the behavior of the Brenda family and behavior of Charles. She was directly experiencing Charles's dishonesty, lying, adultery, and stupidity, and lack of respect for her. There was no need for Bashir to make up anything. And she was in contact with dozens of people simultaneously that were in the royal family. And she could make up her mind about who was saying what about her, who was doing what about her. There was no need for Bashir to say that the royal family was spying on her. It wasn't spying, it was open attack on her. Open attack that she was suffering. She was being targeted by. Now, here are the 2 pages on the Times, Daniel Morgan inquiry. And it is a piece by Fiona Hamilton, whose heading is "Brutal Killing Has Cast a Long Shadow Over the Metropolitan Police." When they say force, they mean Metropolitan Police. So, what the Times is saying in that two-page spread, essentially, so the details are, of course, contained in 1,200 pages, which we shall be referring to from time to time. Now, here are the key recommendations that the Times publishes. At least 11 police officers prominent in investigations into the Morgan murder were Freemasons, which was a source of recurring suspicion and mistrust, the panel said. Their inquiry found no evidence that those connections were used to disrupt inquiries, but recommended that officers be required to declare membership of such organizations when joining the force, that is a secret society, the Freemasons. The panel expressed concern that policies and procedures relating to the use of informants by law enforcement agencies still allowed scope for corrupt practices. Still, that is the day the report was published, yesterday, which is today, currently, and recommended independent inspections take this into account. It wants the Metropolitan Police to make sure it has the necessary resources to tackle corrupt behavior, and said that Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary should carry out a review to ensure that corruption whistleblowers were well protected. Now, this report, they're over hyping the report because they say it is 1,200 pages long. But as we maintain, this program maintains, no inquiry in this country should be trusted. This kind of heading, damning, industrial scale dishonesty by Bashir, and so on, these are hypes. These are parts of the culture of corruption that dominates this country and its agencies. And the state and the agencies include the people on the panel. Remember what we're saying. So there is no real recommendation for any real change to end the corruption, or in the case of McPherson, to end racism in the Metropolitan Police. And what the scum is saying, we shall have a look. There is nothing really. So let's see what the I newspaper, which has become part of the Daily Mail narrative. The racism of the I newspaper, we shall talk about that in a minute. This is the one that is referring to Parm Sandhu. We have referred to Parm Sandhu in the past, in the recent past, not very long in the past. Now, she has got a piece on page 32 of the I newspaper, which says, it's an interview. Institutional racism, that fits the Met Police. Parm Sandhu has written a frank account of her career in the UK's largest force. This one is by Sarina Sandhu. Now, who is Sarina Sandhu and who is Parm Sandhu? So, at the start of her career in the Metropolitan Police, newly trained and eager to put what she had learned to practice, Parm Sandhu had a stark lesson in how some of her colleagues saw her. On a night shift in an unlit area of East London, her partner for the shift deserted her, and her uniform made her a target rather than a figure of authority. Two men approached to ask if she was on the game. Despite their laughter, Sandhu remembers being terrified that she would be assaulted or raped. The reason why Sandhu, a 25-year-old rookie in 1990, believes she found herself in this situation was because her colleague took issue with the color of her skin and decided to leave her there. My radio didn't work. We didn't have mobile phones. I was absolutely terrified, she says, recalling that night shift. I look back and I think that was such an unfair, horrible thing to do, because whatever you think of an individual, you are putting them in danger, not because they have upset you or they have been horrible to you, but based on the color of their skin. It is just one of the many accounts of racism and sexism that Sandhu, now in her mid-50s and born in Birmingham to immigrants from Punjab, India, has recounted in her memoir, Black and Blue, which has just been published. After leaving an abusive arranged marriage, She joined the Met in 1989 and eventually became a chief superintendent, one of the highest ranking female Asian officers in its 189-year history. But discrimination bookended her rise through the UK's largest police force. Her resignation after 3 decades and marred the chapters in between. It's a wonder the Sandhu, who lives in Kent, did not hand in her badge after her experience in East London. She almost did until a few fellow Asian women in the force offered her a moment of clarity, and they made a pact to support each other in the job. I like a good fight, a fair fight, Sandhu tells. I genuinely believe that you are not going to change organizations by standing on the outside. The only way you are going to do that is by being the voice within. That is absolutely stupid. It never works. And there are other things that we shall be talking about. The Metropolitan Police's racism as now. This book is written by Parm Sandhu along with a white name, Stuart Preble. We shall go into that another time. So that's the piece about racism. Let's see what the thing about institutional corruption is saying. Now, this headline, remember what we have been saying, that the I newspaper has become the Daily Mail. So it is even worse today. And it's saying that there have been 5 investigations into Daniel Morgan's murder. The Metropolitan Police is guilty of institutional corruption in its failure to acknowledge the incompetence and venality confounding its attempts to solve the murder of Daniel Morgan, an independent report has found. Now, this is written by Cathal Milmo. The Milmo is a corrupt journal, and his corruption dates back many years. And he is a stooge or a colluder with the state in the corruption of various government departments, etc., etc. So there is nothing of substance in there. So let's see if the Daily Mirror has got anything about the police corruption. So the Mirror have got nearly 2 pages on bent coppers. And we don't believe that they are anywhere near telling the truth. So their kind of editorial on page 8, corrupt force, has got the right heading. See if the substance in the copy underneath bears that out. When an independent panel concludes the Metropolitan Police suffered institutional corruption while investigating an axe murder, apologies are not enough. The panel's criticisms over the botched investigation into private investigator Daniel Morgan's murder even touched the force's commissioner, Dame Cressida Dick. The country's biggest and most important police force must prove it has changed, because the mishandling and the blocking of probe into the 1987 murder, plus complaints, the panel's own inquiry was hampered, undermined public confidence and faith in justice. We commend Daniel Morgan's brother, Alistair, for the 34-year struggle for justice. He should never have needed to fight. Now, that's not anywhere near what is needed, is it? Commending his brother is the obvious, easiest thing. What about ending corruption in the police? That is not there in the Daily Mirror. So let's check if the Guardian has got anything. Remember what we are saying. Now, this is the front page of the Guardian today, which is written by Bikram Dodd and Dan Sabag. Its heading is Institutionally Corrupt. Daniel Morgan Inquiry Condemns Metropolitan Police. And its first paragraph says, the Metropolitan Police have been described as institutionally corrupt, and its commissioner, Cressida Dick, personally censured for obstruction by an independent inquiry set up to review the murder of the private detective Daniel Morgan. The findings of a panel inquiring into Morgan's killing in 1987 triggered calls from his brother Alistair for Dick to consider her position. The panel's findings were a victory for the 34-year-long struggle for justice by the Morgan family, during which They said they endured being lied to, fobbed off, bullied, and degraded. Notice what the family are quoted as saying: 34-year-long struggle for justice by the Morgan family, during which they said they endured being lied to, fobbed off, bullied, and degraded by those institutions they believed they had the right to rely on. So it was bullying by the Metropolitan Police, bullying of the family of the murder victim Daniel Morgan. Within hours, the Met rejected the report's key findings and dismissed Morgan's call for Dick to step down. The two people who could oust the commissioner, the Home Secretary, and London Mayor, let it be known, she still enjoyed their full confidence. Remember what we said about Sadiq Khan. We tweeted yesterday in response to the former television journalist Michael Crick, who had tweeted, "Has Sadiq Khan made any comment?" And we said that we had been saying that Sadiq Khan not do for years. And Sadiq Khan is not in possession of an independent mind. He's a stooge. So there is a very small heading here in The Guardian which says, "Inquiry highlights the murky meaning dirty, links between the police, the media, and investigator that lasted decades." So back to the front page of the Daily Mail, which reads, "Rotten to the core." This is very rare. And it says, this is the only paper that is saying it, that Cressida Dick was fighting for her career. It says, Cressida Dick was fighting for survival last night after a bombshell report branded her force institutionally corrupt. On a shameful day for the Metropolitan Police, a £16 million inquiry into the murder of a private investigator accused the Metropolitan Police, of decades of cover-up, incompetence, and corruption that continues to this day. Now, we shall be referring to this report and the report about this report and the statement, quite clear statement in the Daily Mail piece today, that corruption is continuing today. We shall come back to the London Borough of Tower Hamlets. And as anyone watching this or viewing the previous editions of the Khoodeelaar television channel would know or would note, we have gone into some details, unique world exclusive details, as to why nobody to this day has been prosecuted by the police, charged by the police with any crimes done by the Lutfur Rahman regime as the, quote, elected mayor in Tower Hamlets. And we have asked questions as to why Andy Earlham, this overhyped lead petitioner against Lutfur Rahman, has not made any comment about most of the reports about the police refusing to disclose evidence as to why they have never charged anyone with any of the crimes done by the Tower Hamlets Council regime, fronted by Lutfur Rahman in the post of elected mayor. We shall be talking more about that, of course, in due course. And we are going to end this part A, at this stage. So this will be just over. This is not just over an hour or maybe